As of last week, the internet thought that Lugia Vstar was going to be a pretty good card, but nothing crazy, and now chaos ensues and everyone is losing their mind because Lugia is doing pretty well in Japan, and some players in the North American, European regions have started testing Lugia and discovered that it's actually really good. Unfortunately for some of you, maybe fortunately for others, I am here with my typical mild takes, and I think things are probably less bad than they seem, and it'll probably be fine. So let's talk about why. As always, be sure to subscribe to the channel for daily Pokemon TCG content. Check out my sponsors and things like that in the description down below. Leave a like and a comment. I really appreciate all of the support. But let's talk about Lugia V-Star. So Lugia V-Star is an obviously powerful card. In a nutshell, high HP, high damage output, a really good ability that gets the new Archeops into play, and then you could start slapping down special energies everywhere you want and doing a lot of damage and a lot of crazy stuff between Lugia and even things like Amazing Rare Eviltal and Radiant Charizard are seeing themselves included into successful Lugia decks off the bat. Some of the images circulating Twitter are these breakdowns of the tournaments. So we see that Lugia has been 50% of the top fours in Japanese events this past week, and it's been 43% of the top 8 decks in Japanese events in the past weeks. So these meta shares look a little scary, but remember, Lugia is the new card. Everybody wants to try it out and play it and see if they can win with this new powerful V-Star Pokemon that actually has some really cool mechanics going on with it, like I said, with the new Archeops card. So I think this can be a product of a lot of things, and people are also not trying to hard counter Lugia off of the bat. So let's let the meta settle for a little bit before we start jumping to conclusions here. We've seen cards like Rayquaza VMAX and Reshiram and Zekrom Tag Team GX get initial success over in Japan and then completely flop everywhere else. So I'm not saying that this is a reoccurrence of that phenomena, but let's also keep that in mind. And things are typically not as bad as they seem or not as extreme as they seem at first. Robin Schultz of Limitless TCG and former world champion shared their first take on the LAIC meta tier list, with Lugia in S tier and nothing in A tier, and then everything else in B to D. And Robin defined his tiers as B doesn't lose as badly to Lugia as the rest, C loses to Lugia depending on their list, and D just straight up loses to Lugia. I'm sure this is an exaggeration, because even if Lugia has favored matchups versus many things, the metagame and the decks built in the format will warp around Lugia to make it so Lugia is not winning an overtly amount of those games, similar to what happened with Palkia and with Mew. You know, Palkia and Mew started out with having explosively good matchup spreads, like 60-40, 70-30s versus a lot of the decks, until the meta formed and warped around those decks being the best decks, until Palkia and Mew came down to being, you know, 50-50 and above decks, not beating everything kind of decks. And that'll probably happen the same way with Lugia if Lugia is as good as Robin is saying it is here in this tier list depiction. Azul GG also had a funny take on this on Twitter, saying, "I'm so happy Lugia is going to be the next Palkia V-Star Mew VMAX ADP. I miss tournaments where 30% of the meta is one deck, and it's obvious it's by far the most powerful deck." A little rant from Azul with some truth in it, some exaggeration. Again, even if we do have a format where Lugia is that much of the tournament, that's going to make it all the more easy to counter it for players that are concocting counter decks and teching for and preparing their matchups against something like Lugia. You know, if a deck is 30% of the meta, that's where we see, like back in SLC 2022, where Gengar Arceus won the tournament because Mew was so popular that a dark deck would just dominate. We can definitely see things like that happen to Lugia. Just a couple of counters off the top of my head. Duraludon VMAX, it can't be hit by Pokemon with special energy on it. Beedrill that will just one-shot Lugia for having special energy on it, and a single prize deck with lightning attackers like Regigigas. Those will probably all be pretty good at combating Lugia's dominance if Lugia actually does dominate. Let me know what y'all think in the comments down below, and I'll see you next time here on Celio's Network.